host of the debate will introduce the candidates. He is the editor-at-large of Reason Magazine. He's a columnist for the LA Times, and he hosts the Fifth Column podcast. I expect to hear exactly 3 people cheering for that because that is what I heard would happen. Okay, this is Matt Welch.
Let's get some presidential candidates up here first. Media creator, voluntarist, veteran for peace, Adam Kokesh. Come on down. I didn't expect Bob Barker in that here, but why not? I'll get you one at a time. Adam, you're sitting on my flank here, sir. You don't need to split. I don't. You do that later on his website. Kim Ruff, Phoenix, entrepreneur, manufacturer, military mom. Come on down. I don't know. Hang on. Hello. This is super awkward. I just had a 5th grader. Arvin Vora, former Libertarian National Committee Vice Chair, educational entrepreneur, natty dresser. Come on down, Arvin Vora. It's hard to believe that he's an anti-tax activist. I don't know what gives it away. Dan Berman, taxation is theft. Berman, I screwed it up. Adam, socked me in the jaw. Global nomad, welcome to the great stage. Finally, an actual elected representative of the state of New Hampshire, Max Abramson, come on up. We are going to, I don't know what we're going to say, the Pledge of Allegiance here? Why are we all saying it? Sit down already.
Everyone, please take a knee.
Please take a knee, yeah. As I awkwardly try to transition microphones here, because this is what I'm actually going to use in the debates. There we go, Adam, hold this. I wanted to point out that so I'm Matt Welch from Reason Magazine, that it's great to see you all again. I was here last year, and we had a rollicking good time. I lament that Bourbon Supreme is not with us this year, but I am wearing his tie, which is not an endorsement except for a fashion sense. But I wanted to point out for all of you mass people that this place has a special significance in the history of Reason. 51 years ago, basically last month or 2 months ago, Reason Magazine was founded 5 miles from here by a 20-year-old Boston University college student named Lanny Friedlander, who did it literally in his mom's basement in Brighton, just down the road from here. So it's a very exciting place for us. It's special and hard. One of the first people that he was showing it to was a guy who ended up playing guitar in Van Morrison's band. It's all very confusing. So anyways, we're going to have this a loosely structured, hopefully fun, entertaining, informative discussion here. We will start by each candidate giving 60 seconds. Who's the time Nazi here? Is it Jeff? Okay.
No Nazis here.
Well, I will be I'm the one who raised the hand at the statist things here, so I'm happy. If I need to, I will pound this gavel. I don't think, since we're not going to be talking about Oklahoma City-style bombings, sadly, in this debate tonight, we might not need the gavel, but we're just going to keep things loose, try to keep things within a minute. If someone is mentioned by name, singled out in a critical way, they can respond, the usual stuff, but this is not going to be a Chuck Todd situation up here. So we are going to start with everyone giving just a 60-second spiel, give or take, hopefully answering the question of why me or why you doing this. And we'll start from this way. We sadly have a microphone sharing situation, although it's a sign of sort of communal goodwill that you can do this here. Max, introduce yourself.
I'm Max Abramson. I vote for Max's for less taxes. I'm now in my second term as a Libertarian state representative. 3 years ago, I was one of 4 Libertarian state representatives in the country, and you kind of keep your head low at that time, but today, unfortunately, I'm the only Libertarian legislator left in the country. I'm running on a platform of bringing the troops home, but I also want to remind folks that there are 511,000 elected positions in the country, mostly at the local level. Half of them are uncontested, and 10% of them no one runs at all. There are also 511,000 registered libertarian voters in the country. So if you really want to have an impact, I'm not just a legislator, I'm also a member of my town's planning board. I was effective at repealing minimum parking requirements, and we're working to kind of relax the zoning laws in my town. But I've also done a lot of work as a legislator. You can, whether your interest is in legislation, budget committee, planning board, whatever your interest is, please consider running for a local office. There are a lot of open positions out there. Thank you.
Dan, taxation staff, Bourbon.
I'm Dan, taxation staff at Bourbon. I agree so much with taxation staff that I changed my middle name. This is one issue. Why I'm running is because nobody's addressing this issue as hard as it needs to be addressed. Taxes are the linchpin that hold this entire system together. All these government programs that we don't like, that are oppressing us, that are stealing from us, that are sticking us in cages, are funded with tax dollars. What's the best way to take down even the biggest company? Vote with your dollars, take your money away. But we can't do that, because what happens if we do? Men show up with guns to take everything that we have. This is not a sustainable system. They say this is the price we pay to live in a civilized society. This is not a civilized society. So this is one of the biggest issues that we need to address. We need to find out how we can voluntarily fund government programs. There are ways, it has worked in the past. We just need to start going there. Thank you.
Arvin Bora.
My name is Arvin Bora, and I'm running to end the welfare state and end the income tax. On my first day, I will pardon Edward Snowden, Ross Ulbricht, and Julian Assange, followed by every single nonviolent drug user, drug seller, drug trafficker, drug kingpin, that's people like Ross Ulbricht, anyone who's in jail for a weapons or a cryptocurrency charge, anyone who shouldn't be there, I'm gonna pardon. But I want to talk briefly about what I'm going to do just as the nominee. If I'm your nominee, I will use that bully pulpit to spread information, for example, about jury nullification. If I'm the nominee, more people will know that jury nullification brought freedom of the press to America than today finally know where Aleppo is, thanks to Gary Johnson. My website is votebora.com, and I'm running to end the welfare state and to end the income tax.
Is it okay if I don't stand?
It's up to you, man.
Okay, since everybody else is at the same level, we might as well just keep it eye level. Also, I'm lazy. Just kidding. My name is Kim Ruff. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I work as an operations director for a plastic and steel fabrication plant. I've been part of the Libertarian Party for about a decade, and the reason why I'm running is a lot the same reason these gentlemen are running, which is that we understand libertarian philosophy and ideology, but the difference between me and them, and no offense to them because they're all wonderful in their own way, is that I focus specifically on what you can actually do within that role. Rather than talking about these wide sweeping things that we could possibly do because we have this grab bag of power at our disposal, like the Democrats do. You saw their debate. They were like, I'm going to give you a car for everybody. It was like Oprah. But instead, what I want to talk about is what we can actually reasonably do as libertarians as president, which is pretty much limited down to foreign policy, staffing the executive branch, enforcing legislation, and vetoing crappy legislation. And then I want to be able to define that, get that message out, and allow down-ticket candidates who have the highest probability of getting elected and affecting positive change to build on that by discussing how that translates to their area. What can you do at your state or local area? For a long time, we've acted like libertarian candidates had to be the be-all to end-all. But the truth is, this is a group effort. People tease us about our infighting, but the balance of it is that if we work together in tandem, because we all believe that freedom is the ultimate noble goal, then we can absolutely achieve it together. So push for the party. Push this rock up the hill. Stop allowing everyone else to define us and what we believe be that person. That's why I'm running.
Adam Croquet.
Don't worry, I follow orders very well. I'm a very obedient libertarian. I will also stay seated. I'm really glad I get to go last after all these great candidates, so I can say, pretty much what they said, plus what Jacob said. Who should be up here, by the way? Yeah, Jacob Harburg, would you like to see him run? Would you like to see him as a representative of the party? Absolutely, great voice for freedom. And I'd like to say it's a really exciting year for the party when we have so many incredible, passionate candidates. And we have an incredible opportunity. We have a lot of candidates who are really connected with the party, who are going to help build this party for the long term, or as long as it takes, who are going to help support down-ticket candidates who have run in other races, who know what it takes to do that and know what it takes to support people and recruit and encourage people to run and grow this movement and grow this party. There's one, I hate to say, false divide in our movement that is really unnecessary and destructive, and it's this false belief that principle and pragmatism are opposed. Principle is pragmatic. The more principled you get, the more success, the more pragmatic you will be. Thank you very much.
You guys stick to your times a hell of a lot better than Bill de Blasio does. That's all I gotta say. I'm really excited because on my computer, or the internet, I found a randomizer. I have their 5 names and I hit the button and then it puts them in order. You can see, don't cheat, Adam, because you can see. But so this takes me from even having to think even one iota more. But anyway, so I'm going to ask most of the questions tonight will be the same to all 5, just to kind of, we're doing a lot of introductions here. We'll get to some more personal pointed stuff as we go as well, but we'll start off with some basic ones. First one is this. So if you look at the history of third party and independent presidential results over my lifetime, I'm 50 years old, there are 2 really good predictors of a bad year. And the predictors are, is your previous presidential election, was it really, really close and contentious? That's one. And another one is, right now, is everyone all super fired up about politics as reflected by massive turnout? For instance, I don't know, a midterm election that has the highest turnout in 100 years. So we've got 2 things set up atmospherically for the party to suffer, to fail, or at least to get a decline. So question is, how does this inform your own strategy and how does it inform your own ideas about where the Libertarian Party should go? Let's go to the randomizer, Dan Byrne. Dan, taxation is theft proof.
Man, where should the party go? This is the way I see it. Right now, we're looking at an election coming up. Historically, for the past few decades, the incumbent always takes over. So Trump's gonna get this. Let's just take that as a given. Let's go to the Democrats, which we've historically had a hard time getting into the Libertarian Party, and let's get them into the Libertarian Party. Now, I know there's a lot we disagree on because they all believe that these socialist programs will help them survive or get over their lives. But the reality is, they're suffering at the hands of government. They're being taxed into poverty, and they get this. They just don't understand the right solution, and the libertarian solution is the right solution for them. I've been testing this with so many Democrats, and they're starting to see it, and this is where the next generation of new voters is going to come. This is where the next generation of young voters is. We need to get them on board with the Libertarian Party. This is going to be a powerful force to help us win the next election.
Max Abrams.
There are 14 safe blue wall states that haven't gone Republican in the last 30 years. There are 20 safe Republican states that haven't gone Democrat in the last 30 years. And the Republicans who live in states like Massachusetts are kind of giving up, and the voter turnout for conservatives is going down. I've looked at other first past the post countries. Yeah, first past the post plurality voting sucks. It does. But the way that minor parties, whether they're center right, center left, or they're like the Pirate Party, they have a unique selling point. The way that they win is they spend, like the year before the election, they go door to door and they drop off door hangers and they say, this is a Lib Dem district. This is Libertarian versus Democrat. No Republicans ever won here before. So they go to every household that has even one single Republican in that district. Or by the same token, if you live in one of the 20 safe Democrat states, 20 Republican states, you go to every Democrat, every liberal, every progressive, and you say, this is, if you want to stop Trump, you've got to vote Libertarian here. Tactical voting is how minor parties win in other countries.
Adam Kokesh.
For a long time, as libertarians, we have been playing their game, being confused about ethics versus aesthetics, how we want things to look, versus the ethical premise of libertarianism. What we hold dear is the non-aggression principle. And there's been a certain contradiction even in saying that it's about this or it's about that, or going issue by issue, as opposed to saying, no, it's about this fundamental ethical principle of freedom that we all believe in because it unites us as human beings. It speaks to the core of our soul. And what we have when we're forced into this one-size-fits-nobody but the government profiteers false solution is a polarization where people have to fight over who's right and who's wrong because one answer is going to be forced on everybody. Is the audio okay? Yeah. Feels like, okay. And if we can get past that, we can start saying, we don't need to be forced into a one-size-fits-all situation. We can localize government. This is the everybody gets what they want strategy. Localization is the cure for polarization. And I think this is what makes our platform fundamentally different. Because while I am technically running for president, I am resigning on day one in order to become the bankruptcy agent of the federal government, in order to create a peaceful, orderly process that leaves us with 50 independent states and up to 562 sovereign native nations. And it's amazing already to see how this idea that everybody can get what they want at the local level is uniting people. So it's not just even left or right, or what are the conditions of this cycle or this year, but how do we actually dig deeper in our principles in a way that reaches everyone?
It's time.
And that's the basis of this platform. Thank you.
Camera.
So to reiterate, the question was basically that, well, how do we see ourselves being successful at a time where it seems like, statistically speaking, we're least likely to
How does it
do that?
affect your strategy, the way that you're approaching this, given that the conditions atmospherically do not seem good for a third party or an independent party in a presidential campaign?
Okay, so there's a lot of myriad factors that affect how our campaign works and why we're doing what we're doing. And I cannot tell you, Jacob, how emotionally validating it was to hear your speech, because it was like every idea I'd ever had or thought that I'd ever had about what the point of the Libertarian Party or what it is that we're trying to achieve is about. It was beautiful to hear it, so thank you very much for it. That's exactly what we talk about on our campaign, and every time I've ever interviewed and even in discussions in our campaign group is, what is the point and purpose of us running a candidate ever? And it is always like Plato's allegory of the cave. Everybody else who's been indoctrinated into this mindset of statism thinks about it as being these shadow puppet projections on the wall. They're chained to the rock, they take it as gospel. But we have seen the light, and it is our duty as people who have seen the light and know the ethics involved in being a libertarian to go back and walk people from that position and into that world as well, to see that we are actually capable of achieving greater than what we've accepted. So our campaign strategy is 1, tell the truth, always and without fail. 2, support down ballot candidates because they're the most likely to get elected and actually affect positive change. And 3, energize our awesome volunteers because they're the ones who get it done.
It's time.
Should I switch up the mic step one?
If you have audio issues, we can use that
Question.
Okay.
Are we allowed to drop it later?
You gotta earn it. It can't just be gratuitous. Arvin, give it a whirl. If the mic goes out, we have a replacement. Go.
The best way to look at it is what Jacob said, which is our goal is not to win elections. That is the means to our goal. It is not the only means to our goal. Our goal is to shut down the damage that the government does. And we need to think creatively. Think about this. We can do the opposite of what they did at Lexington and Concord. We can try to dress like the other guys. We can try to do what they do and get beaten. Or we can adopt the guerrilla tactics that made this country. And that's what I want to do. The reason I talk about jury nullification so much and pardoning so much is that if we can just convince 1 in every 4 or every 6 or every 12 people to intentionally hang a jury so that all that plea bargaining money is not coming in, to intentionally let people go who don't belong in a cage, that's what makes the difference. If we can convince more people to homeschool and leave government school, that makes a difference. If we can convince more people to use Bitcoin, that makes a difference. And that's what this campaign is about, using the tactics that work.
Remain standing, Arvin Gora, the randomizer likes you. So, unless, I don't know, a Bill Welch shocker happens between now and then, most likely you would be, if you gain the nomination, any of you, would be running against Donald Trump. So, given that you're competing against Donald Trump, what is, to your mind, what has been the worst aspect of the Trump presidency so far?
The worst aspect has been his failure to withdraw from NATO. NATO is nothing but military welfare, and I oppose every part of the welfare state. I don't want American money, I don't want American blood, I don't want American souls or morality wasted on these wars that do nothing but enrich defense contractors and damage both the morality and the physical bodies of people who want to do good and are instead tricked into doing evil. So that's the biggest thing. If I'm president, I'm going to bring all the troops home. I'm going to shut down every military base. Our money will no longer be used to defend Israel or Saudi Arabia or France. They can take care of themselves. Now, since we talked about Trump, one thing that I am very good at, I don't think anyone will disagree, is getting a large number of people talking about what I want them to talk about. And if I'm the nominee, this country will be talking at every dinner table, every Thanksgiving table, every water cooler about our issues.
Dan, taxation is that.
So this is an interesting question because one thing that we all want to do is we want to attack both parties. This is historically what libertarians try to do because both parties are bad for us, right? We say they're both the same wings of the bird that's trying to kill us. Here's the thing. We can't attack these parties. We can't attack Trump. We can say, look, you've done some things that people like, right? And if you've ever tried to argue with a Trump supporter, you know this. You can't tell them that Trump is bad. You can't tell them that he has done anything wrong. He is God as far as they're concerned. What we can do is we can say, look, he's done some great things, but we can do so much more, and he's not willing to go there. He did some good things with the IRS. Last week, he made this thing where they're not able to confiscate funds over structuring anymore, which affects a lot of small cash businesses. That's an amazing thing that Trump did. But he could have done so much more. He could have just shut down the entire IRS. Why didn't he do that? These are the things that we can say, look, we understand you did some amazing things, but you can do so much better. And we don't think you have the courage to do it because you have all your political ties, and that's okay. We'll do it for you.
Adam Kokesh, worst thing about Trump presidency so far?
The worst thing about the Trump presidency is the presidency part. We spend all this time arguing about personalities and policies and who should sit on the throne, and we never stop to ask, why do we have the throne in the first place? Even the founders of this country never envisioned their model covering such a huge area and population. They never imagined this authority that really shouldn't exist, that's completely unjustified, to ever become so dominant in our society that we were caught up in this personality game where we're arguing again about who should sit on the throne. We're playing their game. And with due respect to all these candidates who I love and respect and consider friends, they're still playing this game of saying, I could be president. And the fact is, nobody should be president. America is good enough to not have one. We don't need a central authority. We are too good for this government. And when we are united in freedom instead of under a central government, we will be that much more American.
Max Abrams, worst aspect of the Trump presidency so far?
Of course, his refusal to bring the troops home. This is not just Obama's war, it's Bush's war. It was Bill Clinton's 48 different airstrikes in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. We all know that those airstrikes were politically motivated, that they were necessary for the Clinton administration to try to drive up its approval rating, and they kept doing it every time their approval ratings went down. And the Trump administration has been no different. He is a politician, even though he hasn't served in elective office before. My reason for running for office is to bring the troops home. To end the wars overseas. We have military bases in 800. We have 800 military bases overseas. We have almost a third of our entire military deployed overseas. We've had thousands and thousands of our military guys be killed. We've had tens of thousands seriously injured, disabled, blinded. Again, in the 20 safe Republican states, we can take Trump on in a simple libertarian versus Trump race. Max versus Trump, bringing the troops home.
Kim Ruff.
To my mind, probably the worst thing that Trump has done, among many things that he's done poorly, is continue the unconstitutional war in Yemen. But in order to go after him now, which is totally an impeachable offense, we would have to own the fact that Obama started it and admit the fact that we've continued this from president to president, just as Max clearly pointed out. That is something we could hang him from the nearest gallows for, metaphorically speaking. However, we choose not to, because in order to do that, we would end up challenging something that we accept as gospel, just as Adam rightly pointed out. So, now, Dan said this, and this was really good. If you want to talk to somebody who's a die-hard Trump supporter, make a concession. Let's make a concession. The Mueller report. Bullshit charges, trumped up for nonsense. And I use Trump as a verb as it actually was intended in From Bridge. It's nonsense. And then they ended up pursuing it, which was again nonsense. But you can't actually impeach him on something which is Yemen. So go after that.
So, we also run against Dan. Taxation staff, Berman gets the next one. According to the randomizer. You'd also be running, in theory, against Democrat. I would presume that most of you either watched or made yourself familiar with the 20-person Democratic debates of a couple of weeks ago. What was, in your mind, significant about those debates in terms of significant/worrying, if that's where you're going with it, in terms of the direction of the modern Democratic Party?
So this is what we have to realize about the Democrats, and this has been a struggle. As the Libertarian Party, we're faced with people thinking that, hey, we want to take away all the social services, we want people to starve in the streets and die without health care. That's not what we want. But the Democrats are preying on that. They're putting fear in people's minds, and they're making them afraid that if we don't get government to give you all these things, you're going to die in the streets. All these rich people are taking everything from you, they're forcing you to work so that you can survive. And so you have to elect us to give you things just to survive. The problem is they really are being taxed into poverty, but the rich people are not putting them there. The government is. The government is what's taking away all of their income out of their paycheck. The government is what's making the rent too damn high by giving them property tax. Property tax is what you have to pay just to keep what you already have. That's not freedom, that's slavery. So if people realize this, they will get on board with us, and they have gotten on board with my campaign, and they do support this message that government is the problem and we can fix it without making free handouts.
Adam Kokesh, direction of the Democratic Party as revealed, or something significant that you saw in the debates from 2 weeks ago.
I don't hate myself enough to sit down and watch 2 hours of Democrats debating.
4 hours, Adam. That's what we had to watch.
4 hours? Holy crap.
2 nights.
Are you okay?
The first night it was my daughter's like having a birthday sleepover, so I was able to peace out.
There aren't enough drugs in the world to make me sit through that. Well, I just want to point out that I don't think any of the Democrats running are qualified to be president. I don't think Donald Trump is qualified to be president. I don't think I'm qualified to be president. I don't think anybody on this stage is qualified to be president. And I think that really is the fundamental difference of how the Libertarian Party looks at government, to say that no one should wield this unjust authority. And so if I would, oh man, I was going to yield the balance of my time to let them respond to that. But I think it's just, again, the important distinction here is that this is the reality of the system that we live under. We've created this throne, we've created this false system, and it's about wielding a power that shouldn't exist. I have the only platform that says, I'm not going to put on the ring of power, I'm going to throw it directly into the fire.
Max Abramson.
Thank you very much. One of the moderators asked a simple question. He asked, would you give health care benefits at the expense of the taxpayer to illegal aliens? Every single Democrat on that stage raised their hand. When I was involved in the Sanctuary Cities debate on the floor of the New Hampshire House, we found out, after a lot of extensive searching, that total benefits are costing American taxpayers about $155 billion a year. The response that I saw on social media and the response that I saw elsewhere were, especially from Democrats, working class Democrats, that they're not getting proper health care, they're not getting it through work, and they're certainly not getting any benefits. They get disqualified from receiving benefits, and their taxes are going to go up to pay for even more benefits for more illegal aliens to come into the country, not to work. We want them to come here to work. We want them to come here to start businesses, to become students. We're a pro-immigration political party, but it was seeing them insisting, every single Democrat putting their hand up saying that they would force you to pay for health care, not for the workers, but for illegal aliens, and that angered a lot of people.
Kim Ruff, Democratic debates, what did it tell us?
Thank you for reiterating. It's funny. Initially, when I watched them, I got so angry because it seemed like the only standout person was Tulsi because she was anti-war, which was something that had long undergirded liberal thought in the Democratic Party. I was like, why is that an anomaly? That should be the way the Democrats are. And then I thought about it, and this is what makes me very interested to see how 2020 shakes out. The Democrats are desperate. They had almost 4 years since Trump blew their minds wide open after winning over Clinton, who they thought was a shoo-in, to get their act together. And they can't. The best they can do is offer us trinkets in order to incentivize voting for them. They got nothing. And to me, that means that we got something and we will finally get our way, which is to let you alone.
The biggest issue in the Democratic debate, to me, is actually what you brought up, Max. This welfarism, this deep-seated virtue signaling. To me, virtue signaling is a sign of fear, and it is a sign of weakness. And with due respect to you, Alex, and to you, John, it's exactly what I've seen coming out of the Libertarian National Committee. Our position is open borders. It is my position, completely open borders. And if you want to come here from Mexico or Switzerland or England or Japan and work, I think you have that right. And if you want to come here and starve to death, you have that right too. But the right you do not have at all is to come here and say somebody else pay for my health care or pay for my food. And that's not just something that's limited to people from other countries. If you are born here, if your great-great-great-grandmother came here in the Mayflower, you still don't have that right. And we need to fight against that attitude and against that right, and I absolutely will do that if I'm the nominee.
Remain standing, Arvin Bora once again. So now we're going to go a round of more personalized questions for everybody, starting with Arvin. You have been a figure of some mild controversy within the party here. You were almost kicked off the executive committee a couple of times. Different state parties censured you over your comments that you made about age of consent laws and making a joke about shooting school boards or whatever. Look up on the internet if you need to find it, refresh your minds on this. So question is, given that kind of rebuke, and you ran again for vice chair and did not win and did not come particularly close to winning, given that rebuke, what does that tell you about your standing with the party and your tactic, the change that you made 3 or 4 years ago when you decided to become more kind of controversial about your approach and your public comments?
I was for many years the Libertarian Party golden boy. Jeff Neal declared that I was the rookie of the year on the LNC. Then I was the vice chair for a full term. And at the end of it, here's what I found. That when I spoke out against something as basic to minarchism, anarchism, classical liberalism, every type of libertarianism as abolishing government schools, that was seen as controversial. And I realized that my desire to be liked, or my desire to not make too many waves, in doing that I had failed as a libertarian leader. It is the job of a libertarian leader to tell the truth in the way that people can hear it. And I don't mean hear as an accept, I mean hear as in not rationalize that you said something else. I don't support any kind of welfare. Jacob, I don't support vouchers. I don't support charter schools. I don't support joining the military. I do not support enlisting. And I do support family decision-making, individual decision-making, not government decision-making, in all personal issues of every kind.
Dan, taxation, theft, Berman. There is a perception out there in the world, including the world that I interact with, in media that libertarians are unserious people, that they're silly, they're kind of foolish. You're changed your name to Taxation is Theft. You have a really, really big yellow hat, and your campaign headquarters is Cancun, Mexico. Are you playing into the stereotype of libertarians being a little bit weird?
I didn't see this coming. So, look, I grew up in California surrounded by Democrats who think the taxes are the price you pay to live in a civilized society. The government should give us everything. This is just where I grew up. And I knew when I started my first business when I was like 10, when I got taken to the principal's office in high school because I was selling candy bars without a permit, I knew taxation was theft, but I couldn't say anything about it. I was told, my parents told me, when you start your business, I was doing small web design for small businesses. When you start your business, make sure you file, make sure you report everything to the IRS because they will find out. And whatever you do, don't tell anybody that you think this is wrong because the IRS will put you on a list and they will haunt you. I was afraid to say taxation is theft. We can't be afraid to say taxation is theft. We can't let them suppress our freedom of speech with fear.
Adam Kokesh, how many times have you been arrested?
That's a good question.
Yeah. But like if you had to guess, I mean, sort of an estimated.
Somewhere over 50.
Have you thought, like, is it, maybe you wish, I wish it was one in every state. That would have been cool.
Although the parks police are really concentrated in Washington, D.C., so I'm kind of, I got limited targets of availability there.
Have you thought that maybe it's you?
Oh, it's so mean. It's so mean. Isn't that the ultimate libertarian credential right there? I think a lot of people... Raise your hand in this room if you've ever been arrested. Did that make you more or less libertarian?
More.
I just never got caught.
I think I was 18.
You have no idea how many times I haven't gotten caught.
More substantively, but also quickly, because the minute is coming out. But you have a reputation, sort of an aggressive, high-strung individual. Is that the type of kind of comportment or frame of mind that is desirable in a Libertarian Party candidate?
10 seconds.
10 seconds, wow, all right.
5, 4.
No, I'm thinking of the quote from Goldwater, extremism in defense of liberty is no vice. And I think what most people respect me for is that I've been willing to put my life and my body on the line for freedom the same way I did in the Marine Corps.
Very good, Kim Rowe. So there was a perception under when Gary Johnson ran for president that he wasn't necessarily as effective of a communicator as people could have been, the Libertarian Party would want to have out there. Was doing a nexus search on everybody's names here and the word libertarian. I saw your name and libertarian 19 times. You have 625 Twitter followers. We're in a game of we're trying to communicate a message out there to the world. Do you have enough of a push and a pull in that world to carry the banner?
I do, but it would certainly help if you interviewed me. Here's the thing,
This is when
guys.
mic dropping is allowed.
Right? No, here's the thing, because I get this a lot. We need name recognition. We need a sizable war chest. You have to have held political office before. I don't know why, but apparently that's very, very helpful if you're going to try and be a libertarian in office. But this is the deal. Instead of saying, you don't have name recognition, or how come you don't have any money, put my name out there. Donate money to my campaign. Help us, because we are helping you. Everything that we do is because we were activists first. We are reticent politicians. I am not doing this for my ego. I am doing this because we have to fight back. And if you guys can do better, great. But I'm standing here right now, and you can make us stronger and better. Put our name out there. Interview us. Donate money to our campaign. Push the message. This is an all-hands-on-deck fight.
Max Stevenson. You're an elected representative, the only one here. You were elected as a Republican. You have run as a Libertarian, you've been a Republican, and then a Libertarian, and you've been a Republican. There are some people who feel like the Libertarian Party has had a certain amount of experience recently with Northeastern Libertarian Republicans. Are they Libertarians, or are they not?
Republican savior.
What do you say to those people who treat you with some skepticism based on your ever-changing affiliation with political parties?
Well, you have to understand. So I've been a member of the Libertarian Party since I think 1995 or 96. Although I didn't start paying dues until 2000. I've been doing ballot access, manning Libertarian tables for 20 years. I've been volunteering for other people's campaigns. And about 10 years ago, I started running as a Libertarian. I ran for a Rockingham County attorney and won a record percentage of the vote. In 2016, I ran again because we didn't have a candidate for governor and we needed one in order to get major party status and automatic ballot access. So I ran for governor and on a very, very shoestring campaign, won about $800 and some dollars. I won 31,234 votes. Just enough votes to get major party status and ballot access in New Hampshire for the first time in 20 years. And it allowed us to get it allowed me for the first time in 20 years to register as a voter as a Libertarian because New Hampshire's ballot access and voting rules are a little bit different. But we were already going to lose the race because the LPNH nominated a candidate who was promoting a lot of new business taxes for a lot of new social spending.
Kim Ruff?
Wait, me again?
Yes.
Oh, we covered everybody?
Yeah, we're on a new randomizer
Yes.
round here. So you present yourself in comparison to the other people on stage here, kind of thinking pragmatically through what can be done, what you can do. I presume or think that you'd like to, for instance, shut down the Department of Education, like take advantage of what a president and administration can do.
Right.
My question is, you shut down the Department of Education. Thomas Massey says he wants to do this. You still have the underlying piece of legislation, the 1966 or whatever Education Act, that requires the administration to administer this level of funding through all of the, say, what do you do then? As a pragmatic person, you still have underlying legislation saying you've got to do this. So you shut it down, but you still have to spend the money and throw it out there. How do you solve that problem?
This is a good question. Thank you very much. Okay.
Good cop, bad copying me. You see how this
I know,
happens?
you like it? I'm good. I have to manage people for a living. What do you expect? Okay, so to answer this question, one of the beautiful things about being the quote-unquote highest executive office in the land is that you have at your disposal an amazingly huge bully pulpit. And you can use that bully pulpit to influence the sentiments of the nation, influence legislation. You can't author legislation, you can't necessarily pass legislation, but you absolutely can influence it. And one of the things that we constantly do in our campaign is when I get asked questions that are totally outside of the purview of the office, I say, I can't do that. However, you at the local or state level can enlist your representative to do this, or you can file an initiative or referendum. So if we start to create this socio-political sea change where we're talking about liberty and thinking about it, then we can encourage actual legislators to look at repealing this legislation, encourage activists to push their legislators to do so. This is everybody working in tandem.
Arvin Vora, continuing on that theme, hits close to your area of interest too. You said before that you would love to see the abolition of government school, period. As the head of the federal government, what does that mean and look like? Do you make it illegal, or do you kick it back to the states to make their decisions?
The first part of that begins with the campaign itself. If Gary Johnson, instead of wasting the 2016 opportunity on just showing everyone that he was kind of nice, told people about homeschooling, Bitcoin, and jury nullification, more people would be doing those things. And if I'm the nominee, I guarantee you more people will be homeschooling. As president, I have the same bully pulpit option, but let it never be said that I fight clean. I will use every dirty trick in the book to shut government schools down. If that means finding something even worse than Common Core, so be it. If that means hamstringing the Department of Education, so be it. If that means doing whatever it takes, so be it. Welfare in every form is wrong. And if I am the president, I will do whatever it takes to either encourage people to leave government schools voluntarily or to shut them down, hamstring them, break them, make them unable to function, no matter what it takes.
Adam Kokesh, day one, you've signed the executive order. You've turned in the keys. You've walked out. 4 million people who work for the executive branch of the United States, including some people who have a few guns, say, nope. Now what?
I think he missed the part of peaceful, orderly, responsible bankruptcy process that really is what we're doing with this. So while I'm resigning on day one, we declare the federal government of no authority because the enforcement of its laws is fundamentally unethical to begin with, and we become a custodial institution to go through a bankruptcy process. So a lot of those employees might be transitioned to state governments, at least they would have the opportunity. But when it comes down to it, I'm not going to cry over a horse and buggy manufacturer losing their job because the car was invented. And I'm certainly not going to lose any sleep over an IRS agent losing their job because the American people figured out that taxation is theft. And just to address something, big difference between Kim's platform, I think as much as we share the same philosophical ground and we have the most distinct difference in our platforms, I don't really believe in being offended, but to say, well, let's be realistic and do what the Constitution says. The founders of this country didn't say, hey, well, is that really in line with the Magna Carta? Is the king going to be okay with that? No, they said, we're taking a stand for freedom because that's what we believe in, and that's what the LP should be about.
Dan, taxation is theft. Berman, you have on your website a passage about erasing the debt. Sounds a bit magic wandy to me, with a little sense of default. Explain what you're talking about.
So, a lot of people know how corporations work. A corporation borrows money. The people who operate the corporation don't owe that money. The corporation has to shut down and default on its debts. The corporations, its employees, they do not owe that debt. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't ask for any money to borrow from the Federal Reserve or China. I didn't receive any money. I didn't spend any money. I didn't sign for it. So I don't see why I should have to pay it back. Now, here's the interesting thing. The government keeps raising the debt ceiling, and we can't stop them. But I bet you if we started defaulting on a couple loans, those banks wouldn't lend us any money. Right? So I think this is actually a smart plan. And when you look at where a lot of the loans go, a big portion of it goes to the Federal Reserve. Should we really worry if they're going to lose a little bit of money that they created from nothing?
10 seconds.
So this is actually a practical solution. There is a practical way to do it. It doesn't mean all of the debt, but it does mean most of the debt that we didn't borrow and we shouldn't be taxed to pay.
Max Abramson, you are proud of your work in fighting for mandatory labeling for GMO in foods. Is that something that you think that the president should do? Should that be done on a federal level? And to a room full of libertarians, can you explain why you are proud of that?
So, obviously I was opposed to the idea at first, and then I'm open listener. I believe that one of the fundamental tenets of libertarianism or classical liberalism is that we listen to people. So I did, and found out that it was a mandate that doesn't cost anything, and the opposition admitted that they already label GMO foods for export and not for domestic consumption. But at first I thought, as probably most of my colleagues in the legislature thought, well, you can just look at the label, if it is likely to contain GMOs. But we've had people go to the hospital, people get sick, people have allergic reactions. It may be to the synthetic pesticides and GMO products. But there was an old common law requirement. There was an old common law requirement that if a company, Monsanto in this case, if a company knew about a harm or a danger to a product, that they had a common law obligation to notify you of the danger of that product. And after I started talking to people who lost the hair on their body or ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks, that this is actually a harm, just like labeling for shellfish or peanuts.
Thank you. Dan, taxation is theft. You want to get in there? Yeah, come on. Give her the microphone.
Thank you. Actually, sorry, Adam. I wanted to touch on what Adam said because it requires clarification. He was talking about the distinction between my campaign versus his and how we don't go far enough in our rhetoric. And that's not necessarily true, though I love the fact that he pointed that out. We do absolutely advocate for complete unencumbered liberty. The reason why we talk about constitutional limitations is because we are overriding a lifetime of indoctrination into this mindset. There is very few bad grammar. There are very few people who actually think that government is not a necessity in some way, shape, or form. They might say it's a necessary evil, but they still think it's a necessity. We're trying to combat that mentality, and the first way to show them that freedom is the path forward is by, at the very minimum, scaling it back to its constitutional limitations, which most people can get behind. Then the next person after that, knock yourselves out.
Let's go to our next round, which will get into some more biographical stuff. Dan, taxation is theft. Berman, you will start here. You do a lot of work with NGOs with a emphasis in Africa. Tell us a little bit about how that is, what you're doing and how that affects your worldview and your approach to this canvassing.
Sure. So I've been traveling around the world. I've been meeting with a lot of people. I've been trying to figure out why are different countries having some of the same problems we're having. They have them at completely different levels. But when you realize it, when you talk to people, you understand that it all comes down to the same thing. It's government. But it's not just that government is there. It's that government is taxing people into poverty. It's taking away everything we have. A few thousand years ago, you could just set out into the world, find a piece of land, and live. And that was it. But now we have to work, and government creates a system that forces that. What's government always concerned about? The unemployment rate. We have to get the unemployment rate down to 0. Well, slave owners did the same thing. They had to get their unemployment rate down to 0. Keep working, don't stop. This is the same thing. And why do we have to work to pay to have jobs to get money? To pay the government for the land that, how did they get property rights to that? They just circled a map and said that's ours. And this is happening all around the world. And this is going to affect foreign policy and how I work with other countries and how they see that they need liberty too.
Adam Kokesh, talk a little bit about how your experience as a veteran serving the war affects your worldview and your approach as a Libertarian Party presidential candidate.
Well, I joined the Marine Corps because I like to learn the hard way. That's a big part of what made me a libertarian. And sometimes, are there any other veterans or military guys in the room here? I know we have at least a handful with the party specifically, and I'm not going to blow smoke up your butts and say thank you for your service so much as I'm sorry for your servitude, and I'm glad you woke up, and I'm glad you're here. And there's a huge opportunity that we are missing as a movement, as a party, because there are so many people like us who have been propelled away from statism by our military experience. And there are veterans today drinking themselves to death into bottles and crawling away to hide from the world because they know that something is fundamentally wrong about what they experienced in the military, what they did overseas, or what they were a part of. And we need to make a really deliberate effort right now to recruit those guys, and gals, not just to save their lives, because that's a huge opportunity that we have as libertarians. All of us, whether you're a veteran or not, you can talk to a veteran and you can show them the ethical framework behind the worldview of libertarianism that solves so many problems, so many contradictions, so many tragedies rattling around in those heads, and not just wake them up, but liberate them and bring them into this cause and into this movement. And for me, I torture people when I was in Fallujah, and that's something that I have to live with every day. And for a long time, I thought of my activism, you don't get arrested so much, and being willing to take those risks that some people weren't willing to, as a kind of penance for that. But I've come to the point of understanding now that it's not so much about penance as it is still about service and sacrifice and willing to take the risks with yourself to do what's right. And that's how my military service has influenced my activism and my politics.
Thank you. Not everybody in this room was a vice chair of the Libertarian National Committee and spent that much time in leadership. What did you learn in a way that affects your worldview and the way that you're approaching this race?
The LNC is not allowed to directly control or directly bias any part of this presidential candidate. And yet, we always found some way to make sure that we got Gary Johnson front and center between 2012 and 2016. Not as a presumptive nominee, no. as the previous nominee who we now wanted to speak out. Now, and running now, I can see the things that they've been doing, seeing the insider strategy, having been there for so long. The reason that I encourage these debates to start early is that I know, just as if Justin Amash decides to run, just as I know he's going to wait till the last minute, the LNC is going to try to make sure that this debate and other debates like it are not broadcast until the very last minute, so that it's easy for an outsider, whether it's Justin or somebody else, so it's easy for an outsider to take over. So I have been using my internal LNC knowledge to make these debates happen earlier. Because at the end of this, I want you to have the time to think about, to vet, to question, to debate with any person who is seeking the nomination. In 2016, the RNC lost control of their nomination process. The DNC almost lost control of its nomination process. And I believe in 2020, the LNC will lose control of our nomination process.
Kim Ruff, you are a manufacturer. A little Rosie the Riveter action going on in Phoenix. Talk about how that's informed your worldview and your approach to this candidacy.
Okay. Well, to clarify how I even got in manufacturing, because my degrees are actually in film, communication, and poli-sci, because I originally wanted to be a film critic. My family owns a steel fabrication plant in South Phoenix, and if you're not familiar with the Arizona economy, one of the main staples for us was open pit copper mining. So we did a lot of work for them, and then I've since transitioned into working for a company that caters to the semiconductor industry. Now, when you talk about economic concerns, typically where it starts to hit first is usually in petroleum. And then from there it goes into commodities like copper, and then things that are built from those commodities like steel. Now, steel's not made of copper, it has molybdenum, which is a byproduct of mining copper, but you get what I'm saying. Usually when you have the first tremors of a downward cycle economically, it hits manufacturing first. And having worked in manufacturing, you see this constant ebb and flow. And you also see, particularly when you're the daughter of a business owner in manufacturing, how much government rules and regulation, whether it's something as simple as EPA stuff or it's property rights and easements, how it all negatively impacts the ability of someone to run a business. It doesn't matter how ethical you are as an individual, government will find a way to get their hand in your pocket and make it impossible for you to thrive. So that is really a huge impetus behind me being of the mentality that I am. Goldwater Republican to start, and then I shifted because of the foreign wars, but that background in manufacturing really, that affects me on economics.
Max Abramson, you are the legislator up here. So tell us a little bit, especially to those of us who are not legislators, how that affects your worldview, what you've learned, and how you are applying that to your candidacy.
I would say that it actually kind of works against you. I ask everyone to run for local office, but the more years you spend as an elected official, I think that Thomas Jefferson said it best when he said that once a man casts his eye on an elective office, it starts to work a little corruption into their mind. So when you say that I'm a legislator, I almost take a little bit of offense at that. But I'm a two-term legislator, but I've done a lot of work also as a member of my town's planning board, trustee of the trust fund, budget committee, and constable. And I feel like I've done a lot. It's unpaid work. I make $100 a year as a state legislator, and I'm proud of it because it means that we have to work in a real job. So we're a real citizen legislature, so we understand how the commuting and how the world really works. I think that I get a lot more as a software developer and working in road construction than I do as a legislator, but certainly getting a chance to see the lobbyists and hear the excuses they make for cronyism and crony capitalism and wanting bailouts and special favors and special tax breaks and subsidies and kickbacks, and seeing that every single day and getting used to it and getting used to the same arguments for them wanting to use the state for corrupt rent-seeking behavior. It gives me a lot of terrific stories that I get to fall back on. But in terms of running for office, yes, it definitely helps. Having served in the legislature and having served as a libertarian legislator, kind of being on your own, being a member of the House Business Caucus and others. But I think that real world experience, for those of you looking at moving on to elective office at some point, I think that your life in the real world is more additive.
All right, remain standing, Max. We're going to do a new round here. Arvin referenced Justin Amash. So the question is, Justin Amash walks through those doors now, says, I'm candidate here, and leave yourself aside for the moment. And would you support Justin Amash first or one of these people on stage?
I will simply leave the decision of who to support up to the delegates. I've served as a delegate at 2 different conventions, and we've all seen the meme that's gone out. It's the old guy in the car, black Cadillac or Lincoln, and it's the Republican savior. And there's a prostitute leaning up in a short skirt, and it says, the Libertarian Party, as though we've been just waiting all night for a Republican savior to come in and save us. And when I heard, and I love Gary Johnson, he's soft libertarian. I like Bill Weld, he's very affable. But when they said fiscally conservative, socially liberal, it was just clear that they just didn't understand. That's so far off from what we are. It's not anywhere near correct. We're fiscally libertarian, but socially libertarian, and libertarian on the We believe in a live and let live philosophy, that you have the right to decide what to put into or take out of your own body. We believe that you have the right to make your own decisions. And having yet another Democrat, yet another Republican come in and try to save us with their name recognition, and having served in Congress, I felt so crestfallen when I saw that meme. Other people clicked the laugh button, and I almost clicked the cry button, because I said, we have our own message. We're a different party. We're not Republican-like. We're not cheap Democrats. We're something completely different. We believe in a free society.
Arvin Borel.
Oh, same question.
Yes, same question.
There's nothing in the world that I respect more than integrity and boldness. And Adam is one of the reasons that I so much respected you, and continue to respect you, of course. Adam was one of the people, when I was first learning about this, I was so in awe of the kind of work that you did. And exactly as much in awe of you as I am and was, is exactly how in awe of Justin I am not. Because it does not take courage to speak out against a president that is unpopular with more than half the population. If you look at Ron Paul, type in Ron Paul government schools or Ron Paul public schools, you'll see speeches and articles and interviews about that topic. If you do that with Justin Amash, last time I checked, maybe he did something yesterday, I don't know. But if you do that with Justin Amash, who has been a libertarian-leaning Republican leader for a long time now, you will find nothing. We don't need somebody who's really good at playing political charades and pretending to be bold when he's just pandering to a large group of people who believe that the orange man is bad. That is not political boldness. So in terms of that question, would I support Justin Amash or one of the people standing here, or one of the people sitting here? I would support any of the people sitting here in a second over Justin Amash, because they have shown real boldness, not just pandering. They have been willing to say things that are true, honest, and unpopular, and that to me is the true measure of leadership.
Adam Kokesh. Kind of hard to throw Arvin under the bus now. So.
Yeah, no, I gotta follow that with this answer. You're making me sound like a politician, Arvin. Hey. Well, I like Justin. I like Gary. He's a personal friend, and I've become friends even with Bill Weld recently. So, and it's not a political answer, because I will say the harshest things against all of them politically. And what I see as more important for the party is that we cannot elect or nominate a former Republican who that's their identity for the 4th cycle in a row. I just think that would set the party back so far. It's hard, because as you see Bob Barr, and Gary Johnson was better than Bob Barr, and Justin Amash might be that much better than Gary Johnson even. And it's the worst temptation we've ever seen from this vector, but it's the most important time to resist it. And I would really enthusiastically welcome Amash to the race, but I would be more thrilled to support and see anybody on the stage beating him in Austin.
Jim Ruff.
Oh, goodness, I feel like I talk about Justin Amash more than I do about myself. Okay, so now, how do I feel about Justin Amash? I think Justin Amash was a very, very good conservative legislator. I thought it was awesome that he said things that other people weren't saying at the time. And I think that it's brave of him to defect from the Republican Party, and I hope that many people indeed take the same tack as they recognize that the Republican Party is not what it was, maybe never ever was what it claimed to be, and the same thing goes for the Democrats. But that makes him politically homeless. That doesn't make him a libertarian. Because to go from that point to get to where we are requires a huge gulf of information and a Kierkegaardian leap of faith. We aren't Republican light, we're not Democrat light. We are advocates of full unencumbered liberty. And that means taking positions that make the public squeamish. I would never boot black tar heroin, but I'm not gonna stop you from doing it because what you do with your life is your business. That's about being liberty, is advocating for things that make you uncomfortable. I don't see somebody who is personally conservative being comfortable saying, yeah, I think we should legalize all narcotics. I think sex work is work. I think that you should have body autonomy. And if that means you want to end your life or ask a friend to do it for you, you should have that right. So no, I don't think he would be a great candidate for us. He's got a lot to learn.
Dan, taxation, Seth, Berman.
So, let's see. Justin Amash.
You got to think about it longer than the rest of them.
If he came in here, I probably would not support him. I'd support any of these candidates. And there's one major difference for that. It's not about policy. I can't say I know too much about him because, for the love of God, I cannot watch politics in Washington. It makes me want to smash my TV every time I turn it on. But here's the thing. The Democrats have already started doing their debates. And this is what we need to know about that. They're not doing that so that they can talk to delegates. They are doing that so that they can address voters and get voters prepared to switch the vote from Trump, from a Republican, to the Democrats. That is why they are doing this on national TV. That is why we are doing this now, because we need to start reaching the voters now. We can't wait until October 2020 and say, hey, okay, elections next month, let's start doing something. We can't even wait till May 2020. We need to be doing this now. And if Justin Amash is busy doing something else that he can't commit to this, hey, I've got a full-time job. I work 40 hours a week, not related to politics. I still have time to put into this. If he can't make up his mind and make that decision now, what's he waiting for? Let him stay where he is, let him do what he's doing, let him choose his own path, but we need to put our support behind myself and these other great candidates so that we can start getting this message out and start getting people to see our faces and know that one of us will be on the ballot in all 50 states and they don't have to vote for Trump or whoever the Democrats come up with.
New question, new round. Arvin, you go first. Throughout the history of this august party, it's been around nearly as long as I have been around, of all of the presidential campaigns, libertarian presidential campaigns that have been run, which one inspires you or is the most interesting to you?
Harry Brown, no question. And the reason for that is that he spoke clearly against all of the sacred cows of the state and why government doesn't work. He specifically explained how the schools, in addition to wasting money, in addition to being welfarist, specifically tried to create a divide between generations by, instead of serving educational purposes, serving social indoctrination purposes. And as an educator and as a libertarian, to me, that was an eye-opener. And it really got me to start thinking more deeply. Harry Brown was able to make sure that we considered the fundamental issues, the issues that matter. Government schools matter. Refusing to enlist in the military, bringing the troops home, that matters. Soda taxes also matter, they just matter less. Ending the income tax matters. Ending the income tax and replacing it with nothing matters. Ending property taxes. And these are the things that he fought for. And the speeches of his that I've seen, the books of his that I've seen, it gets me pumped up, it gets my heart racing. Because this is not someone who is apologizing to the other side for our views. This is somebody who is clearly boldly hammering our views down. And I hope that if I'm the nominee, I can do half as good a job at spreading the message of liberty as Harry Brown did.
Kim Ruff, most inspiring libertarian presidential campaign.
Me. No, I'm just messing. Since Arvin took Harry Brown, and we've actually talked about this before, we've been interviewed and we've been asked, and we said, we both agreed that Ron Paul, Harry Brown, awesome. They were ones that were selected, made it through. But the one that we both adore, and I think she's just amazing, but who wasn't actually a nominee was Mary Ruwart. I don't normally get cowed by celebrities. I'm not like, oh my God, it's you. Her, holy cow. Mary Ruwart is a beautiful person. She's brilliant, she's educated. She was able to articulate the humanitarian aspect of libertarianism. It was so lovely about her. She took things that normally frighten the heck out of people, and she said them in such a manner that it made sense, and they understood that the most humanistic thing you could do is stop trifling in the affairs of other people. Stop trying to, it's harm reduction is what we're trying to do here. And she was able to articulate that. Her book, Making the World, what is it? Healing the World. Yeah, Healing Our World in an Age of Aggression is brilliant and timeless. And it's heartbreaking that it was written in 2008, and here we are, 10 years hence, and it's still, so many of these things have only gotten worse. Love Mary Ruwart. I think she's an amazing person, and if I was even a fraction of the person that she was, I would be thrilled to pieces.
Dan, taxation, is that Berman?
So this is a really interesting question, and I'm going to quote somebody paraphrase somebody that a lot of people in this room probably hate. Stefan Molyneux, who's gotten a really bad name because he used to say some really great things that I agreed with, and today a lot of people hate him because he's kind of done a 180 and says a lot of other things that people don't like. But one thing, I don't watch his show anymore, so I don't even know what it is. But here's the thing, I keep my head out of the drama. I do look at the good things that people do. And the thing that Stefan Molyneux said is, don't worship idols. Because you look at Gandhi, you look at Martin Luther King, they've all had personality flaws. Ron Paul did a lot. He kind of got me to see that taxation is theft, or to see what was going on with the Federal Reserve. And that's how I found the Libertarian Party. And I know a lot of people don't like Ron Paul anymore, but here's the thing. I don't worship Ron Paul as an idol for what he did or what he said, but I respect everything that he said that I agree with. Other people have said things that I completely agree with, and they might be terrible people. But if you can ignore all of the drama, stop paying attention to all the bad things that people are saying and focus on the good things that they're saying, you can take bits and pieces from everybody and you can put together an amazing picture.
Exactly.
But you can't do that if you're focusing on this person, this is my favorite, and being afraid that someone else is going to poke holes in that and say, oh, well, that person did such and such, and we can't look at it that way. We need to look at all of the good and all the positive and put it together, and that is what libertarianism is. Nobody's a perfect libertarian.
Adam Kokesh, inspiring libertarian presidential campaign.
Well, you took Mary Ruwart, Harry Brown, Ron Paul,
Bob Clark.
I get Bob, all right. No,
Vice presidents are also on the table, so wait out.
All right, and we get the great cop-out answer from Dan of, no, everybody. There are so many great ones, it's so hard to choose from. No, I would just say that I really have taken inspiration from a lot, and I think one that I think gets under-mentioned is Russell Means as a Native American activist. And one of the things that's unique about this platform is that we have built into the process the opportunity for every Native American nation to become an actual sovereign Native American nation, and to do the best that's practically possible at this point to honor all the broken treaties. And I think some of the influence that I appreciate from Russell Means and the American Indian movement in general has influenced that. I also went to the Native American Prep School for high school, so I'm a little biased there. But I would just point out, as long as we're talking about nominees and a little inside baseball stuff here, the people in this room here, y'all have the opportunity to be the most important people in this process as delegates to Austin next year. Don't just come out to the state meetings. Make sure that you're set to be in Austin next year and you get to be one of about 1,000 votes to decide who the next nominee is, and take that power and take charge of the party, because I have yet to hear a single complaint about the party, including that you didn't like the nominee because Gary only won by about 5 points last time. I haven't heard a single complaint about the Libertarian Party that couldn't be solved by the person complaining showing up and doing something about it. So thank y'all for showing up and being inspired Zion.
Next, inspiring Libertarian Party presidential campaign.
Ron Paul. And since Harry Brown was taken, Harry Brown was my first Libertarian presidential campaign that I got involved in, campaigned actively for, donated money, and I got my family involved. But Ron Paul, I have to say, I live in New Hampshire, so we have the first in the nation primary. We had kids coming in, 20s, 30s, from all over the country, especially all over the West Coast. People who were brand new to liberty, never heard about libertarianism. There were a lot of Republicans and Democrats who I heard from say they agreed with Ron Paul on almost everything. And many, many Republicans and Democrats became small L libertarians because of Ron Paul. We were holding signs out in the freezing cold weather when it was below 20 degrees, and with the wind chill it was below zero all through November, December, January. We were camping out and camping in and getting people coming up, and we're putting the door hangers out on doors. So many people cared about his message. He was the one candidate on the Republican stage talking about getting back to constitutionally limited government, getting out of the UN, ending this insane war on drugs, ending the whole welfare warfare state, ending the war on crime, the war on terror, the war on poverty, the war on illiteracy, getting government out of healthcare, getting government out of schools, getting government out of your life. He was the one candidate consistently saying that we need to bring the troops home. He was the one candidate consistently talking about less government and more freedom. And a lot of Republicans heard that during those debates, and a lot of Democrats at home were watching that, and they kept hearing that message, and that's when a lot of people woke up. I think that the Ron Paul campaign was the most inspiring to me.
So we have one final round of kind of a policy question, and then we'll get into closing statements here. But this has come up already a couple of times, and Jacob Hornberger obviously talked about it earlier as well. But immigration policy, very contentious. It will be contentious in the 2020 campaign. It is contentious in the country right now. It's a complicated question. So each of you, beginning with Kim Ruff, what is your immigration policy?
Okay, well, I'm very much an advocate for open borders. One of the things that we've talked about, Larry Sharp in particular, has talked about doing an Ellis Island style immigration. But I actually thought sponsorship might be better, because sponsorship allows for more community involvement. That is where you say, okay, I'll take on this family or this individual. I will ensure that they find an opportunity here. I'll look out for them. If something goes awry, I got their back. That builds up the community, and that is something that's the last bulwark against tyranny. I know in some discussions about this, I've covered some other tertiary or secondary issues that feed into the overall immigration debate, and it's been misconstrued as advocacy of closed borders. It's not the case. It's just that most people talk about things like welfarism, or they talk about guns or narcotics or all these other secondary issues. And so in order to chip away at their arguments, you have to cover why these are wrong and why you think that open borders is the best policy. So that's my stance.
Dan, taxation is theft. Berman.
So running my campaign from Mexico, I feel that there's no border big enough to hold me. That should say something. But here's something we need to understand. If you build a dam, right? You build a dam, it's a big wall of concrete, and on one side, water starts building up. And on the other side, water starts going down. Now you have all the water on this side and nothing on this side. And people say, hey, I'm gonna start building homes. It's a nice area here. So what happens? Then you decide, hey, this wall is bad for the environment. Let's get rid of it. What do? Just blow it up? No, all this water is gonna come crashing down and take everything out. It's gonna destroy all the wildlife. It's gonna create chaos all the way down the path of where a river used to be. So what do you need to do? First, you need to level out the water. You need to level out the pressure. You need to equalize, you need to reach equilibrium. And what is that right now? We have a drug war. We have a welfare problem. We have all these issues that we need to fix, and when we fix these problems, we can slowly release the pressure, and then we can get rid of this wall. And I understand it's not a physical wall right now, but there is still a wall. It's a mental wall. It's a mental barrier that people cannot cross. It's easy for us. We can go almost anywhere in the world. We're very privileged in that way. But for so many other people, because of American foreign policy and other countries and their foreign policies, it's very, very difficult to travel. Whatever happened to our right to travel?
President Max Abramson, what is your immigration policy?
Pro-immigration, secure borders. The reason I've always said pro-immigration is because I understand, and we all understand, that the Libertarian Party is and always has been a pro-immigration culture. We have to be honest with the people who want to stop all immigration, that we're a pro-immigration culture, and you kind of have to rip the Band-Aid off and tell them that we like immigrants. And I think there's a poll that says 75% of self-identified libertarians are against these mass deportations. They've been tried before. They were tried in the 1940s and 50s, and they don't work. And they result in racial profiling and the erosion of your civil liberties and the erosion of your rights. The reason I say the secure borders part is in the presence of the welfare state, it would be, and the war on drugs, it would be absolutely impossible to have an open border or even a Canadian border, 2 Canadian borders. And the reason is that Gallup has done international polling. They found there are 750 million people around the world who've said that they would move to another country if they could. Number 1 target, of course, is America. All of the others on their list have secure borders. If we were to take on 750 million people and their families, the cost of that, since 64% of illegal aliens are on welfare or some other type of benefits, and 70% who stay here over time remain on benefits, it would be about twice our total economic output. When people hear open borders, they think that that's the one policy change we'd make. We wouldn't make that change in the presence of the welfare system and the war on drugs and our intrusive foreign policy.
Adam Kokesh, I'll actually direct it a little bit more since you were dissolving the government and kicking things back to the states. Philosophically, should it be a federal issue or should it be a states issue, in addition to telling us what your policy is?
Well, neither really. This oh man, I almost said pro-choice, pro-life, but I meant to say, yeah, open borders, closed borders. It's the same crap. It's the same false framing. The only legitimate borders are private property borders. The idea that the government's borders are relevant at all should be irrelevant. We should be able to form communities based on our own needs, based on private property, that where you can actually reasonably control freedom of movement when you have a righteous basis, as opposed to a government pretending to control it over that huge territorial monopoly. So, yeah, of course, ultimately it's let the states decide. And how do we get down to that community where you have the ability to get what you want? And this is why localization is the cure for polarization. It's the everybody gets what they want strategy. I'm part Jewish. The fringe rise of white nationalism today is viscerally disturbing, and yet I can still say, if a group of people, you want to go form your ethno-state on private property, and you have people who want to be a part of that, and you don't force it on anybody else, and you're not holding anybody captive, I want you to have that right. You're a gun-grabbing socialist, you want to live in a commune, you can bring people together to do that and take your clothes off and run around in the woods. Like, I don't want government to get in your way either. And that's
Not
what
sure they're taking off their clothes anymore, the socialists, but go on.
So the you don't get out much, do you? The libertarian attitude has been too much government should this or should that, when it's really, you can have as much government as you want as long as it's voluntary. And this is where freedom of movement and borders really become relevant when we say, what's a legitimate border? And it's not a government one.
Arvin, cap it off for us.
Yeah, bring us home.
The simple answer to your question is I believe in no welfare and the welfare state, get rid of welfare and open the borders completely. But I want to answer both in a long-term ideology and also in a pragmatic short-term type of way. If we want to talk about what are some short-term things we can do right now, eliminate the H-1 cap. It's a stupid, stupid idea. Keeping skilled labor, which has the lowest crime rates, lowest welfare usage rates, the single thing that keeps American companies afloat, keeping that out is just stupid. It's like keeping computers out. And if you want to see how that works, you can look at the economies of Brazil and Argentina, which overtax computer imports. In terms of long-term, though, Adam's right about this, which is sovereignty is the answer. There should be no public property in this country at all. I want to see 1,000, tens of thousands of Hong Kong-style city-states, which is what we'll get if the federal government simply sells off not just land, but sovereignty, sovereign land. I want to be able to visit Kokesh land or Rough land or any of these places. I want to be able to go to those places, you know, of course, if I can get an invite, and I want those borders to exist. We already have borders that work. You have a border in your house. Country clubs have borders, malls have borders, all of them have borders. They have walls and doors, and they work because somebody owns the land, and there's no problems of the common because there's no commons. I believe that the solution to this, to the problems of the commons, is to privatize, to end the existence of any common land, and instead sell off all sovereign, all public land. So we have the creation of many small, competing sovereign city-states, as we've seen with as the Hong Kong experiment has shown works so well.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've moved on to our final round of Jeopardy here. Beginning with Adam, we'll just go down the road this way because it's the reverse of how we started. 1 minute here. Closing statement if you want, or what have we learned today? Any way you want to do it, 60 seconds is yours, Adam Kokesh.
Was I supposed to be taking notes? I'll stand for this one, all right. How many of y'all had a good time this evening? Yeah? Are we not grateful and excited that we have an awesome crop of candidates so early in the cycle this time? How much did y'all pay for dinner tonight? $50? I just went to a Republican fundraiser a couple weeks for lunch where they charged $300. I want you to take your libertarian discount and just at least take a small part of it and donate to every one of these candidates on stage and help them all get to the next debate. It's really hard for you not to now, because if you had a good time tonight and these people here put the effort in to make that happen, and with credit to Matt too, of course. Great job, by the way. Make it, what's an evening's worth of entertainment worth? Can you give $10 to each of these candidates? I hope you can, I hope you will. I hope you'll support everybody who's taking this race seriously and helping build the Libertarian Party. And I'll just say one last thing. I look around the room and it's cool to have met so many of you before, and it just occurred to me, most of the people in this room right now already have my cell phone number. If you don't, you're one of the odd ones out. Come get it from me afterwards. If you're here tonight and you showed up because you care about the LP, you care about freedom, you care about this movement, you care about this cause, I want to make sure that you're included. You feel like part of the team, part of the family. If you don't have my card, if you can't text me, come find me. I'll be around all day tomorrow. You got a great crop of speakers. We're going to have a lot of fun this weekend. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. I feel like you're going to be like, if you sell $300 worth of candy bars, you get a PlayStation 4! Yeah! Like, how do I follow that?
PlayStation 5.
Yes! Yeah! There you go. My name is Kimbra. I am running for president of the United States of America Libertarian Party. That was adorable. You made that. That was cute. No, it's adorable. Don't worry about it. I'm so grateful to all of you guys for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you this evening, sharing your time with me. It means a lot. It really does. If you want to find out more about my campaign or me, you can look us up on our website. It's ruffphillips2020.com. That's Ruff, R-U-F-F, as in Frank, like dog barking. I learned to say that since high school, and this is a true last name. It's not a joke. It's proud German heritage. Anyway, thank you so much, and I really appreciate it.
So many of you over the last couple of years have said to me this: I like your ideas, but I don't like how you phrase them. Well, the way that you guys have often phrased them is through silence. And that's not phrasing an idea, that's just cowardice. The simple fact is, if you ask people in the libertarian movement today who hates government schools the most, a lot of people are going to say me. And that's a problem, because that question should not be able to be answered. If we are standing for our principles, even the ones that frighten statists, that question should be impossible to answer. It should be like asking which libertarian most hates the drug war. In 2008, we had an amazing opportunity. Dr. Ruhr, an incredible candidate, was running against two Republican moderates, and we made the dumbest political mistake I've ever seen by electing two Republican moderates. Both later left, not to endorse Gary Johnson, not to endorse Justin Amash. They both left. One of them was on the LNC. They left to endorse Mitt Romney. Cowardice will always look like that. And how did they do that? Here's how they did that. They scared the delegates by doing what? Taking Dr. Ruhr, who's a deep, considered libertarian, taking her words out of context, scaring the hell out of the delegates at the last possible second, and making sure that people in fear voted for someone who they didn't really agree with. If you agree with me, if you agree with the fact that silence doesn't work, please support me at votefora.com.
Dan.
I'm going to start with my website because I'm probably going to run out of time to forget it. Berman2020.com, BEHRMAN 2020.com. As libertarians, we always try to take the logical, consistent approach to everything, right? What is moral? What is ethical? And it's wrong to break and enter. It's wrong to steal food, right? But if you're hiking through the woods and there's a snowstorm and you're going to die unless you can find shelter and there just happens to be a cabin there and there's nobody in it, would you break and enter to save your own life? We look at this and we say, okay, look, this is a moral dilemma, but yes, it's survival. It's okay to break and enter, even though it's kind of a crime, but it's not criminal intent. If there's food in the house, would you eat it to survive? Yes, just to stay alive, even though at some level it's wrong.
10 seconds.
What the Democrats are doing is they're getting people to be in this survival mode and they're manipulating them with fear. And if we talk to them on that level, we can understand it. We can change their opinions and help them understand that they are all libertarians with us. They're just being controlled with fear, and we can get them out of that position of fear.
Max.
MaxAbramson.org. I do accept Bitcoin, of course. Actually, I managed to convince Brendan Kelly, who was a former LPNH state chair, to accept Bitcoin. He was the first congressional candidate in the country to accept Bitcoin for his campaigns. And he still doesn't understand the technology. He's about 70 years old, but he's a great guy. Tactical voting. Tactical voting, it's also called strategic voting in Canada. This is a way that we campaign to get Republicans living in safe Democrat districts and get Democrats living in safe Republican districts to vote for our candidate, to get our candidate elected. It is not about us voting for the two parties. It's about us getting other people to vote for our candidates. This is how minor parties get candidates elected around the world. There are 170 entrenched Republican districts in the country where liberals, progressives, social democrats, and Democratic voters have nothing to vote for, and it turns into a downward death spiral. There are 170 entrenched Democrat districts where taxpayers, gun owners, school choice voters, small business owners have nothing to vote for. Those people vote tactically once they realize that a district is a Lib Dem district, or if it's a Libertarian versus Republican race. But they have to know ahead of time. We have to do the work. We have to get the volunteers to do the door hangers and get people knowing, here we have a Libertarian race. In 2016, we had 28 different legislative races where our candidates won more than 25% of the vote, and in some cases, won as much as 39% of the vote. We can use tactical voting to get people elected to legislature or even to Congress.
Thank you, Max. Thank you all. Everyone, a round of applause for our candidates here. The bar is open and sad and lonely.
The next debate will be held November 2nd in South Carolina. If you would like to support increasing the production value, please give at lp.org/donate.